So we are going to learn the king and queen versus king checkmate. This is a very important checkmate because you start with a queen, and if you end the game with the queen, you need to know how to checkmate with a king and a queen. You also start with 8 pawns, any of which can become a queen at some point, and then you need to know how to checkmate. That's why this is so common, because there's so many ways to make a king and queen checkmate scenario happen at the end of a chess game. So the first step is we want to get our queen a knight's move away from the king. So basically, any of these squares are a knight's move away. We know that because if we pretend the king is a knight, he could move to any of, whoops, not that one. He could move to any of these squares like this. So the idea is we want to get our queen to one of those squares. And the reason is because the queen attacks these squares like this. So that means if I highlight all of the squares the king could move to if he were given infinite moves, it would look like this. You see, so the queen kind of covers a bunch of them, but she's basically forming a box that also has this little diagonal slice down the middle. And the king, the closest he can be to this queen is a knight's move away. And so if we can move our queen a knight's move away, it will make it so that the black king cannot approach any closer, and he'll have to move away. And the goal in getting him to move away is we want this king to move to the edge of the board. It doesn't matter which edge of the board. We're also happy if he moves all the way to the corner. Any of these locations are just fine. We don't care. And black gets to pick where he puts the king. So once your opponent makes a move after your knights move away, you just copy the move, as you can see. So if he moves up, we can move up as well. If he moves diagonally this way, we move diagonally that way as well. We're just copying, because what copying is doing is it's keeping us a knight's move away from the king. So here we go. As you can see, we copy. And what we do is we copy until the king gets to the edge of the board or the corner. Doesn't matter which one. Like if he moved here, that would be fine too. Doesn't matter. But once they're on the edge of the board, we want to trap the king on the edge of the board. So for example, we do that by moving here in this case, because now the king can only move to these 3 squares. Every other square he could try to move to is now under attack from white's queen. Right here, yeah, actually I'll do an arrow for each one because he could eventually move to any of them. But as you can see, the black king is kind of stuck on the back row. So we could have also seen if he moved here, we could trap the king on this edge instead. So now the king can only move to these 3 squares. He can't even reach this one though, but he has access to those 3 squares. And that would be sufficient as well. But let's look at what happens once we trap them on the edge. The last step is we actually bring the king up the board, and then we can checkmate once the king has done that. So here we go. And he moves there. Our king guards the G7 square, so we can now move the queen to G7. And this is checkmate. Because again, if the king tries to take the queen, he would be 1 square away from the white king, and that would be check. And you're not allowed to move into check. So that is the basic steps of the king and queen checkmate. I'll quickly review them again. The first step is get your queen a knight's move away from the king. Then you copy his moves until he gets to the edge of the board. And then once he gets to the edge of the board, we glue him to the edge of the board by attacking the squares that would allow him to leave the edge of the board. So then once the king is on the edge of the board, we bring our king in, and then we checkmate with the king guarding the queen. So that is how you win, with a king and a queen. Now, there's also the possibility of stalemating the black king with your queen. So, for example, if they move straight to the corner, like this, boom, and you copy them, because you're supposed to be copying their techniques. You see, we can go back. So once your knights move away, they move diagonal, you do the same, they move up, you move up, and you just copy them. But once they go to that corner, if you copy them, it is now a draw instead of you winning the game. Because this king has 3 moves, but the queen is watching all 3 of those squares, and you're not allowed to move your king into check. So anytime the situation requires you to break a rule in order to keep the game going, you end the game and it is a draw. In this case, it's a draw by stalemate. Stalemate means it's your turn, you're not in check, but you don't have any moves.